Welcome. I'm Lori Lee Binstock, and this is a Trauma Survivor Thrivers podcast. Thank you for joining us for a Trauma Survivor Thrivers podcast, now on Mental Health News Radio Network. This podcast is also available wherever you get your podcasts, but I do suggest checking out Mental Health News Radio Network to find all your podcasts related to mental health. Today's guest is Donna Piper, a former Dance Movement Psychotherapist and certified Akashic Record Healer with 20 years of experience in guiding her clients to heal unresolved trauma to create healthy relationships. She is on a mission to assist women in healing past relationship trauma by tapping into the wisdom of the Akashic Records. Through this transformative process, emotional wounds are uncovered and released in order to empower and reclaim personal power, cultivate self-love, and create healthier and fulfilling relationships. Donna, thank you so much for joining me today.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm excited to be here.
Well, I want to first ask, what is the Akashic Records? And I've never heard this before, and I'm sure all of my audience is curious to know what that is.
Yeah, I've done a lot of spiritual work in it. I heard it in the periphery, but I never was like, I could become the Akashic Records healer consultant. So I totally get that there's like, what is this? So throughout my vast experience, 20 years, when you said that, I was like, oh gosh, I've been doing this a while. I'd always worked in trauma. And as you know, and all the beautiful work that you do, it's very complex, right? It's not, and everyone has their own unique journey on how to heal and what that means to them. So for all to culminate, the Akashic Records is it's an energetic blueprint of everything that your soul has ever done or will do. So it's not like fortune telling. It's not deemed in destiny. It's just a field of energy that you can access to get information that can really heal you beyond what your mind can understand. You know, there's so many studies about our consciousness versus unconscious, right? And so what we think we know and what we do is like only like 3 to 5%, depending on the studies. So that's like 95+% of how we live our lives that we're unaware of or untapped into. And you know, from all your work and stuff, your mind wants to figure things out, right?
Right.
And sometimes that's a loop. And even if we figure it out, it doesn't really make us always feel better, or the trauma hasn't been released or resolved. So the Akashic Record is a very personal record to you. And once it's accessed through just like a prayer of like slipping into that state of consciousness, then you get information that's specific to you to help you kind of heal, like in like little breadcrumbs of things, so that it's not like my theory, or it's not a theory, and it's not a way to heal specifically, but it's really that information and then what you need to actually heal. So you could do past lives in it. You can do just a journey of like self-discovery, sometimes just going inside to being safe enough to feel some feelings or to remember an incident. It's not about recalling and reliving the trauma. It's about going past it to heal whatever is physical, emotional, mental, all of that has been undigested in your consciousness, so that if it's blocking you from something or keeping you from something, that it's no longer the obstacle. So then you could start to see new perspectives. That was really a lot, I know.
No, what a great explanation, because, you know, what I've learned in my healing process is, like you said, the subconscious, the unconscious, that is really what drives a lot of our behaviors. And so many people don't understand that. And I didn't understand that. I had zero clue that was even a thing. And it blows my mind how the knowledge that I've learned from just my own healing. So what you said, you've had done extensive work in trauma. What is your story? Why did you want to go into this? this field of trauma? Because it's heavy.
It is, it really is. So I kind of always was like the person that I'm really good in like a crisis situation. I grew up kind of chaotic. My parents got divorced and they were always fighting. And I was always the one in my family. I mean, I don't know if you could relate or anyone you met, like I could like calm things down and I could see like, okay, if we do this thing, then things are going to be less chaotic. So, and then I was always a friend that if people had really, really traumatic things that are going on or really heavy things, they would rely on me. People also do in the grocery store. Like I'm just someone that people feel comfortable enough, fortunately, to tell their life stories to right away.
Wow.
And I really wanted to help people. So I kind of had that. And then in my own life, my grandfathers that I was very close to died a month apart when I was 16. And that for me was emotionally devastating. My parents didn't know how to deal with death. It was kind of like, it was really horrible and sad, but no one really processed those. So I kind of went into, well, I did go into this very academic, very logical. I'm like, okay, well, because I was hurt so bad, I don't want to be hurt again. Right. I think all of us that have any trauma. And so for me, just as an aside, that I look at trauma as a significant distressing event to me. It's not like it has to be in this category to be traumatic. If anything happens in your life where there's a lot of emotion around it and it doesn't get processed or dissolved or felt and it stays with you, that's trauma to me. And that's unique to everyone. So that was mine. And then, so I went very like, okay, forget the feelings, which I don't suggest it ever, and go right to the mind. And I still was like not processing that. So in college, I found this, I was always interested in psychology and helping people. And I found this thing called dance movement therapy. And I was like, oh, that would probably be a better thing for me because it's not just talk therapy, it's also movement and all this other stuff. So I didn't know anything about dance and I got a dance degree. And then I got my master's in dance movement therapy, which it really did save, like, I didn't realize how depressed I was because I had friends and I did things. And, at 16 to 20s, like, I don't know anyone really that has it all together then, it's a very confusing time anyway. Yeah. But until I saw like how depressed I was and how not dealing with all that grief really affected me, then I was like, oh, this is what I'd like to do, was work with trauma. And it was right at the time where somatics wasn't a thing yet, but I worked with Vietnam veterans. I worked with when the towers went down in New York. That was my introduction to being a new therapist, like right into trauma. Wow. So I learned a lot about that and I was very grateful. But again, it's heavy, especially right out the gate, like, okay. But really working with the veterans, really kind of melded like, okay, sometimes you just can't talk about it. Like, obviously trauma is something that if you could process it and it all worked out, it wouldn't be affecting you now, right? So to put in words sometimes or admitting things that happened is very difficult. And for what I've seen, and it's not always the case, just because we can name it, that's part of it's good, but then sometimes that keeps it like isolates it in a little bubble and like, this is my trauma, this is my story. And it's really not. And to really get beyond that, if you would like that, is to go deeper and to really feel safe enough to feel those feelings. And that's really what the work I do and why I wanted to do it, is to help people feel safe enough and the education around to feel their feelings. Because that's something that if I had when I was 16, I would have been able to process things a lot better.
Yeah. Wow. So when in the Akashic Records, as an Akashic Records healer, does it come out through talk therapy or talking? How do you actually delve in? Is it meditation? How do you delve into someone's Akashic record?
So for me, I've always kind of been more, everyone can access the Akashic Records. It's not like a thing, it's not special. It's more, it's kind of like a good way to do it is like if you've heard of shamanism or like, there's a space that people get into when you come to healing that could see other things that you can't always see, right? Even in talk therapy, we all have blind spots. Like I have my blind spots. I still need to go to my teachers and mentors and people to help me. And in the Akashic Records, the practical how it works is that we show up on a Zoom call or in person like we are now. And you get centered into your heart, and then we connect energetically. And then I say a series of words that open your records. And then once your records are open, then it's a interactive experience, because it's also a part of what you're an active part of your own healing. And that's what I really also like about the Akashic Records and all the work, is I think that we all have everything we need inside of us to heal. It's just having support for each other to figure out how to tap into that and learn what it is. So in this like journey, you go in and you just sense, feel, or imagine things that are there. And no matter how odd it may seem, or like what or nothing, it's like that gives you little breadcrumbs to start to delve into what do you need. So say you were working on, say we did a session and you weren't even really sure where to start, but you've been having a lot of anxiety. And because most people, like I'm sure everyone listening to this podcast, you just don't always show up to someone brand new and be like, okay, these are my traumas. These are the worst things that ever happened to me. Like, let's go in and get in. It's a process, and it's a process of feeling safe into your own system again. So when you go into the records, part of it is bringing in safety and support. So go to the place inside of you where you feel the most safe and supported and loved. And sometimes you don't always feel loved. So that could be harder. And then go into like, what's the first thing you see? Like on this, sometimes it's a journey where you're like, okay, there's a door. What does it look like? Go through the door to the place where the intention behind it is always like, okay, where this anxiety like originated, and or sometimes it's like that's going to give you the most information to help you right now. And then things will happen and unfold. And so what we do, it's back and forth, is things are revealed to you that either you didn't know but makes a lot of sense to you in one way, and then that gets healed and dissolved from and released from your consciousness or unconsciousness, because it's more conscious now. And it sounds a little like, what the heck? And how does that really happen? And but because, everything is energy, we're all made up as energy, just how fast things come together makes bodies, makes, tables, microphones. It's all on a frequency. When you work in energetics, and especially something like the Akashic Records, then you can dissolve in that frequency, and then it gets released and it happens. And then you have that experience yourself. So you could do it on your own. And then from there, you start to build more trust and confidence and safety within. And then, as you know, like safety and trust and support is like the foundation you need to in life to accept yourself, to do whatever, but also just in healing and in relationships. And the more you can find that in yourself and have your own agency and feel safe no matter where you are in the world and what you're doing, and know that you can have the ability to respond to your environment, then that frees up these little parts that you don't have to be so protective over anymore, and it starts to dissolve. It's digestive in that way. So it gets released. And then once the session is over, your records are closed, and then you have some time to process it. But it's just kind of, even though it seems a little bit out there, it's actually a very practical tool, because again, if I'm a practitioner and then I think, oh gosh, okay, I think you need X, Y, and Z, I'm placing on what you need, right? And if you're a very like, okay, I want to do this. I'm very open, and you go with it, but I push your limits beyond what you could do. That's not great for your healing either. Right. So in this way, it gives you just what you need. It's not, I'm telling you like, this is what I
Right.
think you need, and I'm not doing this. And also for trauma, I think it's important, especially men and women, but women too, is to feel like they have their own voice and they're in charge of their own healing. And that becomes like, okay, I can create my own safety. I can be my own advocate. And what does that really mean? Because those are words we talk about a lot, but it's like in practice, like, what does that really mean? You
Right.
know, like,
Yeah.
when are you your own advocate? When does that really help you? When is it like, when can you speak up? And so this gives you just another layer to heal on top of whatever else you're wanting to do.
Yeah.
Weird.
It really reminds me of like hypnotherapy, or for me, I went through so much internal family systems therapy, IFS, and really healing the root cause of some of the behaviors, right? And I did some integrative work with psychedelics and internal family systems therapy, where I was able to just drop into my subconscious very easily. And now I feel like I can just drop into my subconscious really easily and realize a lot of things, which obviously now has given me more awareness in the certain behaviors and certain feelings that I have. But you know, what I want to kind of get into, I know we're focusing on self-acceptance, and I think a lot of it is the awareness, right? And understanding, why do we feel so isolated, or like, why can't we just accept ourselves? This is like I was saying to you before, um, um, we started the podcast, is it's really an ongoing process. And but I feel like you have a lot of focus around self-acceptance, and so I wanted to talk to you about that and why self-acceptance is such a big part of healing, as well as creating relationships.
So self-acceptance is something that I like always struggled with myself. I was very much a perfectionist on that spectrum. So kind of anything in my life was, if I got like a B or something, I was very dramatic and everything was very upsetting to me. Like my whole and I'm like, unless it was perfect, which perfect is a concept that is like not attainable. And if you're perfect, then there's no room for growth. But kind of how my system was always geared in my mind is like, even if I accomplished like the highest thing I could, I always thought, well, that was kind of easy. I should do better. So I was never in that state of self-acceptance. It was always, I should do more. It should be better, all of those things. And then it got to be like, just kind of like too much, like crushingly, like, like you can't live up to any, and there were my own standards. It was my own thing. It wasn't like it was external.
Was
Go
there
ahead.
any, so there wasn't any like expectations put on you by parents or anybody?
No, I think that was
Um,
probably, I've kind of always tried to figure this out, and I don't know if I'll ever know, but my parents were always like, do whatever you'd like. We have we give you carte blanche on whatever you wanted to do. Because I think my mother's philosophy was, if I tell you what to do, then you're going to rebel. And I really want it to be from what you want to do, not, again, not as a reaction to me.
mm,
But my system as a kid, like, I like structure. So I want to be able to be, okay, what are my, give me the bullet points of what I need to accomplish. And I feel safe in that way. So having like such a, like that, it's beautiful, like that she was so
yeah.
like, yeah, I'll support you in whatever. And she has, that made me not have a baseline of what to fall back on. Does that make
Mm,
sense? So it
yes.
kind of, I was always doing more. I never really knew. I didn't have parameters or around
Right. You
that.
didn't have boundaries where
I
you
didn't have
knew
boundaries.
where.
Like I knew like, okay, then I'm achieving more or less. It was just always achieving.
Right.
And
Wow.
that started to spiral against me. And I was like, I accomplished all this stuff, whatever. And then I still didn't feel good about myself. So I was like, what is that? And then I'm like, do I just like have a black mark on my soul? I was very like, what is going on? So I went into a very, about 15 years of this focus on spirituality, like all of the things that I read, everything, like, how do you live that? Like, how do you live a balanced life? Like, how do you be and do? Like all of those concepts, any book you might ever read about self-growth or like, Buddhism, Zen, any of all that stuff. How do you be a loving, compassionate person? Right.
Mm-hmm.
I think everyone wants that, but like, when, my husband does something annoying or like neighbors are calling you to, you know what I mean? Like my emotions about what was going on didn't jive with what I wanted. So I had to go on this journey, and I found a spiritual teacher that really delved into self-acceptance. And I finally like, okay, if I can't accept myself, then no one else can. And it doesn't really matter. I mean, as much as we're about like this plane, we're all about relationships. However, if I can't receive my own love and and not like just self-love, but if I can't receive those words, if I can't accept who I am, if I can't accept my own mistakes, if I can't accept my own perceived darkness, then no one else is going to.
Right.
Like, and I was always in this loop, and a lot of women that I work with too, that's probably why they find me, is that they were looking for an external thing going, okay, well, I accept you no matter what. It was more external. Like if I can be accepted externally by someone, either loved, or if this magic partner comes and drops down and just knows exactly all my needs and meets them exactly, then I'll feel accepted. And, that's a lie. That's a lot of BS. That's never going to happen. Right. We have our two worlds. We all are going through our own stuff. So the more I was in my meditations and the more I was like, okay, I accept myself totally, and said that over and over a lot, then I started to feel more comfortable in my skin. And then I was able to look at things like, okay, what do I feel most shame and guilt about? Right. And is that even something is it shameful or guilty? I've never done anything really bad in my life against someone. So what are these things? And if I can't accept them, then no one that I will ever love or who loves me is going to, I'm not going to allow them in that much. Because if you look at other people in your life, I know I have like the things that I think maybe were not, I can't really think of a good example right now, but maybe you can. But like, like, I don't know, I can't think of it. But I don't look at my husband or other people in the world and like list like, oh, I love them, but this one thing is the one thing that is like the thing that's the deal breaker. Right. But internally, a lot of times we think like, oh, that's the thing that's the deal breaker. Like, and it is really all about us in a very positive way, because if I can't receive love, I can only give, we all think we can give a lot of love out, and we can, but we also have to be able, there's a opposite to that, to receiving. So if you are able to receive just as much love as you get out, that's when it becomes balanced. That's when you grow. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Like if you're like, oh, I'll love you here, but I won't accept it, then that's an imbalance in you. And then it's not, and then becomes conditional. Yeah. So self-acceptance is really just totally accepting yourself. Doesn't it sound like such a free thing? Like, right? For me, like that is, I think that's what keeps me going, because that moment, and the more I've accepted things that I've done, and they're really just like, oh, why didn't I do this thing sooner? Or like I moved from Chicago to LA. Like, should I have stayed in Chicago because I had this one practice? And, like just things that aren't really relevant to my life, like really, like just things to look for to make me feel bad about myself. But, and with trauma, specifically shame and guilt, keep that trauma in that loop. right?
Like feeds it.
Feeds it, because even if you didn't do anything wrong, and you never do anything wrong, but like that's a thing, like, oh, well, I might have did something to have this thing happen to me. And that's new agey BS. I mean, I know I'm in the Akashic Records, but I don't believe that you like bring bad things upon yourself. Like I don't think like, oh, if I should have thought this thought, if I don't have that, so, a lot of people do mindset work, and that's the catch. Like, oh, well, maybe I'm not doing the right mindset work, or maybe I'm not doing this, or if I'd only do that. And those things that if you assess it like that, then it looks at something wrong, and then you can't, and then it makes it harder to accept yourself. Does that make sense?
Yes, that does.
That could be a trap. Like, oh, these people that have these lives and it's all together, they must think X, Y, and Z, wake up and do this routine that's perfect. And, no, that's all like some people it works for. But really, when you have trauma that you look for, your body is seeking ways to release that trauma and dissolve it. So we go naturally through a system that we're not aware of that creates this energy, these neurotransmitters to protect ourselves in trauma. Then your body naturally cycles through that again to discharge it. But because we're so smart, we could stop that process. And that's what kind of and the more we stop it, the more that protection builds up around that incident. And then it becomes potentially not something that becomes an obstacle in our lives other than a protection, because our emotions, our ego, everything in our body is for us to survive.
Mm-hmm.
It's not against us. It's for us to survive. And we create behaviors and everything around because obviously we don't want to feel like that again, right? If it's something that we don't want to feel or uncomfortable. So it's going beyond that and working with that to really feel safe and supported. And feeling safe and supported has to do with self-acceptance. Because, and it's just, they all kind of blend together, but really, because you can't hate yourself and grow. You can't condemn yourself and want something different. The only way to really heal is to accept what happened. Like, I've been guilty of like, oh, I wish that didn't happen. Why did that happen to me? I don't want it to have happened to me, if only. And that just keeps the trauma, the hurt alive, resisting it.
Yes.
Once you feel supported and able to feel those feelings, they don't take as long and they're not as devastating as you think they will be. And then that moves through. So then you can really start to, okay, like you can't like, I hate this thing about me. And if that thing goes away, then it'll all be better. And that's just not how it works.
No,
unfortunately. So that's why I do a big thing about self-acceptance, because, it's part of you, and to really see what that means.
I mean, you can't, like you said, you can't heal. You can't heal if you don't accept yourself, accept the circumstances, and accept what happened. For me, it was, I had the opposite. For my parents had expectations. Things needed to be perfect. If they weren't perfect, then you failed. It's like, there was no way around that. And so I obviously dealt with trauma along the way. So I was just like getting everything wrong. I was diagnosed with ADHD when really I was just disassociating right from my own trauma. And so I had the opposite. I guess there's like this middle ground in parenting where it's like you need boundaries, but you can't be so like strict, and the whole idea of perfection is just not real. And so in doing so, I'm just wondering, because for me, my daughter, she's 8, and I liked what you said about, it's not about you. Like when someone else is being not so nice, I think she takes it on and she's like, something's wrong with me. When the truth is, and I tell her this all the time, like, they're probably going through something. So, let's kind of, and I don't know if you have an answer, like, what can I tell her? And like, self-acceptance is something that I want her to understand early on and not necessarily like have to deal with it later in her 40s.
Yes. I mean, okay. So two things. One, none of us come out of childhood unscathed. I think that's just a part of like, whatever our learning is in this lifelong, in life, like it comes to us, right? Like we both had the same experience with different parenting. Right. Like I had a few friends that their parents were like all over them and like, this is what you do. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I really wish I had that. And they wanted my parent, it's just like,
yeah, I want your parents.
Yeah. I was like, oh, you guys have expectations and it's this and it's clear. So, and they're like, oh, I love that your mom is just like supportive no matter what. So that I think part of it is that you're always doing the best you can as a parent. So even as parents out there, if you also have children and don't want them, obviously you don't want them to have the same sort of hurts and, that you've gone through, but also know that they have also their own path. So you're doing the best that you can. And, what they need to go through is what they need to go through. So trust that. The other thing is that this is like the meditation I give my clients and I talk about all the time. And I don't know if you want to do this with your daughter, I think it's a really good one, but you start out and you just say it out loud is like, I accept we'll start with, I am good. I'm a good girl. And then I am good. And then I am. Those things over and over is just like breaks down. So it's like 5-10 minutes and it's just, I am a good girl or boy. And you just breathe that in and you do it over and over. She could do it out loud or to herself and then change after a few minutes to I am good. And then I am. And then end it with I accept myself totally. I accept myself totally. I accept myself totally. And even though there is not like those words over and over in a while, then it starts to seep in and it does something to your conscious and your brain, how our brain seeps in and thoughts. And it really starts to give you a support. Even if you don't accept yourself totally, it's not one of those things where, you can't lie to yourself. Like if you really don't like if
love
you hate yourself.
Yes.
Yeah. And a lot of people hate themselves. No amount of I love myself will do a bit of good. Right. Because you have to get to the part of like, to the opening of like, okay, why don't I love myself? Why do I dislike myself? Why am I saying these hateful things to myself? Right. Yeah. And deal with that. So that kind of meditation or just saying it over and over again, she can look in the mirror. It depends on, but just those things over and over again for days and days, then it seeps into your consciousness, her consciousness that you are good. And then you can accept yourself. I don't really go into good and bad, but we are split, especially being taught things in school, societally, there's good and bad, right?
Right.
As much as I could say, no, it's not true. It's like, you have to work with what the realism, and we've split stuff into, oh, I'm bad. Oh, I'm good. That's just what we do. So the more you use that language and just say that you're good and not focus on the bad thing, then it'll start to come in and you can accept yourself. And how old is your daughter? If you don't want 8.
Yeah.
So yeah, she's kind of not in that area where she's a teenager, right?
Right. I want to figure this out before we get to the teenage part.
So I would just gently say that, because again, like, she's probably very picks up on people's feelings and absorbs them.
Empathic.
Yes. So then that's always more of a challenge, but just let her, just to educate her that these aren't, what you're saying is true, but just like, okay, you don't have to absorb everyone's pain in the world.
Yeah.
Right. And a lot of people that have a lot of trauma also absorb a lot of pain. Trauma is an interesting thing. And I really do look at it as a gift in some respects. And I don't want to trigger anyone out there, but the amount of pain and amount that the enormous expansion of that pain that is there with trauma also on the flip side gives you a huge capacity to love and a huge capacity to be compassionate and so look at like all of how the pain has gone through or how big maybe that wound is. And also know that as you go through it, that is also a superpower for you to love and to give people to understand. So
Yes.
it creates expansion, but it also can create the expansion into you're just a tremendous amount to feel. And then putting, I don't want to say boundaries in a bad way, but putting boundaries in this so you can like, okay, this is mine and that's theirs. And I could be there for them, but I don't have to fix them. I don't have to overstep myself to really like make everything okay. I can use all that energy and look at how much love I can give myself, and I can start to accept myself even greater. And then from that place, then I can go out and help people and spread love and spread whatever I want to spread. So other than, a lot of times we always have a tendency to give out because maybe we think like we should, or we don't want to be a bad person or whatever. But like, if you could take all of that pain and transmute it into love and give it to yourself first, that is extremely powerful.
Yeah. I did an interview, I think it was last season or the season before. I spoke with a former hockey player for the Vancouver Canucks, Dave Scatcherd, and he got dementia very early on due to several concussions. And he said to me that because now he's a life coach and he works with high performing athletes, but he said specifically one day he was very suicidal and he asked God, why am I going through this? And he said that he felt that in his heart, God said, I had to put you through this so you know what it feels. So you can help others. And I was like, wow, that's so profound, because he was saying before, like any of all the bad stuff happened, all the trauma and all the physical trauma, he would just tell other people, oh, just shake it off, just push through it. And he had to go through it in order to be able to understand what other people are going through. And so, now he's doing something bigger than himself, bigger than, what he planned on doing, which was just to play hockey. So I do believe that, because even for me, I'm in this place where I'm doing something that I love, and I'm I'm helping as many people as I can, or I'm able to. And this, I, prior to this, I was just working, I worked in PR. I worked on the news, and I wasn't happy. And so, the healing really does open up, even though there's that wound, and there's that quote, the wound is where the light enters. And I totally believe that.
Yeah, it's so true, because that is like really kind of gives you the opening to see what your passion is to help people. Because really, even like for you, your daughter, anyone out there, like when you take on a lot of feelings, you can also just do like, are these my feelings or are they someone else's? And you could just say, okay, anyone's feelings that aren't mine, I send them back to you lovingly, and I take back any of my feelings that I have left with someone else lovingly. And that also kind of can help that energy flow, because when you are giving so much like you do, and anyone of your listeners as well, you also want to find that good balance for you, right? Because you don't want to also be drained, and it also doesn't want to, like, you know what I mean? So I don't
No, I mean, that's a great way to really work with it, right? Because I think there were times where I just absorbed, a friend who's going through a lot's energy, and I just held on to that. And then, but I like that idea of just
just
letting it go.
Give back theirs, take back yours. And if you could do that every day or after, especially if you, with some clients or something that's a lot really heavy stuff, it's a really good way to clear just your energy, because also, we have our own stuff, right? Always to,
Yeah, right.
to work on. And, and really, because, relationships they're so reflective of what's going on with us, right? So really, and that's why I like working with relationships so much. So it illuminates what is, like, if I'm annoyed with my husband or something happens with my friend or something happened, it illuminates, okay, so it gives me an opportunity to see, like, why do I have this button? Like, okay, they're my buttons. So how can I dissolve them? What do I need to look at? Is it an older trauma? Is it a relationship like issue with my parents? Or is it just some crazy belief that I just have stuck in my head that it has to be this way? Right. So there's so many opportunities. And that's the other thing why I like the Akashic Records, is because it also gives you a lot of perspectives. The Akashic Records is really there to help you shift your perspective to see all the different ways to do things. Because we get so locked in. I mean, I know with my own pain and client, like, we're just in it, right? Like, sometimes trauma could be like any pain. Like if you have a toothache, you really know about that tooth, right? And then when the toothache's gone, you don't feel those teeth, right? You're not obsessed. So it's, when we're so locked into things, we can't see the other beauty. We can't see all of these other things. And I really think you have to go through all the steps. Even though I said earlier, trauma could be a definitely gift, I don't believe that if you don't go through all the healing things, that you're just going to be like, oh, trauma is like so great. You don't want to, like, for me and the work that I do is learning how to feel feelings was the biggest, it seems simple, but they don't teach us in school. They should. How to really feel a feeling. Now let yourself sit and feel that feeling in your body. All feelings, once they get processed, and I learned this when I was in my master's program, is like they all go back to joy. So the sadness, the guilt, everything. If you allow the feeling to be felt for like max 10 minutes, you don't even need to go that far, then it dissipates. Feelings just want to be felt. And we do a lot, like, you shouldn't be angry. You should be polite, all of that stuff. Like, don't be sad, like, whatever. And if you give yourself a space and a way and learn how to feel them, and then you can teach other people how to feel feelings. And then it doesn't get like pushed down, because it's always going to come out somewhere, right? You said, like, when your daughter's 40, like when I worked with veterans, it was usually because they retired in their 50s and 60s. So all the stuff that they were doing to keep themselves together, when they didn't have that thing anymore, then all the feelings and all the stuff comes up. So the sooner you can process them, the sooner you can learn, then it doesn't have to build, and then it doesn't have to be such a heavy weight for you or any of us. So I think that was probably one of the biggest things also, is to feel safe enough to learn how to feel these feelings. And that's why between the Akashic Records and doing trauma work, you start to allow yourself to kind of allow that little shell to dissolve around it. And then you can be like, okay, then it could be processed, and then you could be free of it.
Wow. Yes. Well, Donna, is there anything else that you would like to add?
No, I mean, I talked a lot, but really anyone listening and anyone, they just really just know that you are not alone. You did nothing wrong. There is nothing bad or innately wrong with you to have whatever experience you've had, and to really start to look at it as, okay, this is somehow I'm going to be benefited, or I need to get some information from this, somehow there's a positive, and just seek out people to support you in whatever way you need so you can find your path to healing. There's so many things available now than ever before. And find one or a combination of people and practices to do, and know that it'll evolve, and that you're not alone, and to seek help, to really reach out.
Yes, absolutely. Donna, thank you so much for the knowledge and joining me today. I really appreciate it, and I'm absolutely going to try that meditation with my daughter. So I'll be working on some things. So thank you. I will. Thank you. That was Donna Piper, certified Akashic Record Healer. For more information on her, check out the show notes. You'll find her website there. November's issue of Authentic Insider is out. Donna contributed to October's issue. Check out Authentic Insider at traumasurvivorthriver.com. That's traumasurvivorthriver.com, as well as past episodes of a Trauma Survivor Thrivers podcast. If you haven't already, please subscribe to my email list to get Authentic Insider magazine in your inbox monthly. I will be speaking at the Wonderland Conference in Miami, November 9th through the 11th. It's the premier global event for psychedelics, mental health, and longevity. So if you're looking for discounted tickets, check out the show notes for the link and use Lori Lee 20 for your promo code. We will be back next week when I speak with Christina Wood, CEO and founder of Wood's Hypnotherapy and Coaching, when we discuss self-sabotage, why we do it, and how to break the cycle. You've been listening to a Trauma Survivor Thrivers podcast. I'm Lori Lee Binstock. Thanks for being a part of the conversation. Take care.